Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I've got another Master Duel video for you all today. So, today we're going to be covering Mathmech once again. This is a deck that I really like laddering with, and it's kind of my go-to deck when I want to take a little bit of a break from playing sprites, because I've been testing pure sprite a lot, and I mean a lot for the various weeks of MCS since its release. I really like pure sprite and I really like solving it, but like I said, sometimes you just want to play a different deck. And for me, Mathmech tends to be that deck that I like to turn to. So, this build here, I don't think is actually any different from the last one we featured, nor is it super different from the list that I got top 8 with in MCS week number 2. I'm still a huge fan of both one Veiler and one Gatchiri added Mister in the deck, as excellent small world bridges. With Small World and these two cards, pretty much literally any single deck in this monster is searchable. There are a couple of chains involving Maxx where sometimes you might not be able to search Maxx, but generally speaking, with this setup, again, particularly Veiler and Gatchiri, you can Small World just about any monster into any other monster in this deck. But mainly, we're of course looking to Small World into the Mathmech Circular. The release of sprites does, herald in this very new powerful archetype, but a lot of the reason that Mathmech can keep up is because a lot of their combos are just one-card combos. In fact, their major turn 1 play can be done with just Circular, and indeed, your OTK with Accesscode can be done with just Circular. So, by that token, you have a lot of flexible space in the deck for more extenders, for more disruption, whatever you feel the need for. I'm still really up on having a lot of extenders in this deck, particularly Addition and Subtraction. We're still playing 3 of each of those. You could, in theory, go down to 2 copies of each and play, maybe like another 2 Veilers if you wanted, maybe some Ghost Ogres, maybe something else. You could, of course, play different Disruption over Triple Tactics talent, which I'm still rocking 3 of in our Mathmech build, because I still think is an extremely powerful card in this meta, with so many monster effects activating during our turns. There's not a lot of decks I could see myself building without Triple Tactic Talents right now. There are a few, like Branded Despia still, but for the most part, I think if your deck has 3 open slots at all for Disruption, or just, good general utility tools, it should probably just be Triple Tactics Talent right now. But the rest of the ratios are still the same. We're still on, of course, 3 of each Small World and Cynet Mining to get Circular that much more consistently. Like I said, 3 of each Addition and Subtraction. Of course, 3 Diameter being the next best Mathmech aside from Circular. We definitely want 3 of these. 2 Sigma. You do still often need the second one for follow-up plays, but I don't think you really need any more than that. Still on Nibiru. I've made this point a lot, but Nibiru is still very good in this format, and there's not a whole lot of decks I would straight up drop it from just because Gigantic Sprite exists. Indeed, even against sprites, there's a lot of the time where you can either negate their Gigantic Sprite with Imperm or something like that, to then drop Nibiru, or there's also a lot of times where they just have to go into Gigantic Sprite, on or before 5 summons, and you can just Nibiru them that way as well. And then, of course, there's also every other deck out there that's not a sprite deck, which might not feel like the majority, but it is. The majority of decks, believe it or not, on ladder are not sprite decks. Granted, sprite variants make up, last time we looked, it was 40% of decks that are hitting Diamond 1, but, that's still 60% of decks that are not running Gigantic Sprite out there. Which, again, you might be like, oh, that's still almost half, but I think that's still enough to justify playing Nibiru. And, of course, in this deck, Nibiru also acts as a Small World bridge, so, indeed, it's pretty good for that. And also, if you open Veiler, having the Nibiru is important. If you open Veiler Small World and want to go to Circular, you're going to need Nibiru for that. Well, actually, you could use Gatchiri as well, which is another reason why I like Gatchiri, but there's enough times where it's good to use Nibiru for that purpose that I think it's worth it beyond just still being good in this meta, for being a good Small World bridge. The extra deck is still the same. I will always advocate for 2 Laplacian. I think it's exceptionally good. I think hand ripping with Laplacian on turn 1 is pretty much the best turn 1 play you can make, and it's not hard to make either. You literally just need Circular plus another extender. It could be Addition, it could be Subtraction, it could be Equation. I don't think it's Gatchiri. I don't think Gatchiri actually works, but suffice it to say, there's enough options and enough you can consistently get that I really value to Laplacian. I definitely still value it higher than Final Sigma. I did, like, to be fair, and maybe not as much as I could have, but I did a little bit of testing, trying to see, like, how viable Final Sigma is, how much I like having the Final Sigma OTK line, and for me, it's really just, like, the main deck slots it takes, like, that and also the extra deck slot. Like, if you want to play Final Sigma, you either have to drop the second Laplacian, or you have to, like, drop something kind of weird, like maybe Avermax or Apollusa or something, but I really don't advocate dropping either of those. It's just not worth it in my opinion. You already have a much easier OTK line in the form of the Accesscode line that doesn't require you to, like, put these, I don't want to call them bricky because, like, they do have other applications, but to put these, in my opinion, unoptimal cards in your main deck, and then of course the extra deck slot as well. So I'm not saying Final Sigma OTK is not without its merits, I just really don't think it's necessary, like, in the slightest. And I much more value the Laplacian hand ripping on turn 1. That, you could also argue, is not quote-unquote necessary, but at the same time, it's like, you know, why wouldn't you hand rip on turn 1 if you could, right? Like, we're seeing, you know, Power Tool, Braver Dragon, cause a huge revitalizing in, like, the whole Virtual World deck just because it can hand rip cards on turn 1. Like, that's how powerful that maneuver is. It's also, like, you can't deny it's the most satisfying feeling in the world to, like, set up your Superfactorial play while also hand ripping on turn 1, and then you force your opponent to discard a called by. It's like, oh, it's so good. Oh, speaking of countering called by, you could maybe make an argument for Ghost Spells being in this deck. Like, I could see a world where maybe you drop, like, one of each talent and Imperm for 2 Ghost Spell to try to play around call by on Superfactorial, but at the same time, I don't know. In this meta, like, you only have so many tech spots, and Ghost Spell was really exceptionally great before because Mathmech was, like, you know, the deck to beat at the time, and Superfactorials were everywhere. And Bell was also useful against Branded Despia, which was very popular at the time as well. It's just like, yeah, those decks are not present in this meta, so you'd really only be playing Ghost Spell to counter called by, like, 90% of the time. It just doesn't feel worth it. I don't know. I like my tech slots to have multiple applications. Like, I'm really not trying to play Ghost Spell mostly to negate call by. It's just not something I think is super great. Alright, I think that's pretty much everything I want to cover about the list here itself, so as always as ever, let's break it down card by card and look at some gameplay. So for this build, we're on 1 Effect Veiler, 3 Maxx, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 Mathmech Sigma, 3 Mathmech Addition, 3 Mathmech Subtraction, 3 Mathmech Diameter, 3 Mathmech Circular, 1 Gatchiri Ad Ignister, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 3 Cynet Mining, 1 Mathmech Equation, 3 Triple Tactics Talent, 3 Small World, 2 Called by the Grave, 1 Crossout Designator, 3 Infinite Impermanence, and then 1 Mathmech Superfactorial. It's going to be the main deck. For the extra deck, we're on 2 Primathmech Laplacian, 2 Primathmech Alembertain, 1 Link Disciple, 1 Link Devotee, 1 Linguriboh, 1 Cyberse Wicckid, 1 Update Jammer, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Splash Mage, 1 Transcode Talker, 1 Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avermax, 1 Apollusa Bow of the Goddess, and then finally, of course, 1 Accesscode Talker. It's going to round out the list there. Now let's look at some gameplay. Our first matchup here is going to be up against a Stun Eldritch deck. I think it's really funny that, you know, before the alt art Eldritch came out, Eldritch was non-existent on ladder in its stun form, in pretty much any form, really. It was really only when the alt art came out that people started playing it again, and I don't blame people. The alt art for Eldritch looks great, and if I had a 2 or 3 of them, I would definitely be playing Eldritch as well, but Runic, even in this meta, I think is still the best stun deck, and even then, Stun Runic is still not anywhere as good as Runic Sprite, so it's honestly not a super great meta for stun decks right now, but that doesn't mean that stun decks are going to go away, and that doesn't mean you'll see any less of them. It just means that, like, there's not any, like, super particularly good stun decks. That's in my opinion, but in any case, opponent's going to go first, starting off with the Cursed Eldland. Getting a Huaquero of the Golden Land is pretty curious, but until they, of course, reveal that they already have the Eldritch in their hand, so looks like they're going to use the Eldritch's effect to send itself. Looks like they're dumping out their hand for the call by. They actually got their second Cursed Eldland. not bringing back their Eldritch, which is fine here. Don't really care about that. And they're just sending another copy off of Card Demise. So their graveyard's pretty well set up. We know they have a Scarlet Sanguine at the very least. We do have an Ash Blossom to counter that. We also have this Call By as well. So despite my opponent having 4 back row, I'm honestly not particularly concerned. Also because we have this Linguriboh here. So Linguriboh is actually one of, in my opinion, Mathmech's greatest strengths, is the ability to make this card super easily. It completely invalidates, even against non-back row based decks, Infinite Impermanence, which can very often be a hard stop to your plays. So the ability to have that protection just like kind of built into your engine, very easily accessible from your extra deck, is very, very nice. So what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to see if I can do an OTK under the Linguriboh, but opponent's got Solemn Strike, so yeah, as good as Linguriboh is, and unfortunately cannot stop a counter trap. That said, we can still make plays here. I'm going to use the Linguriboh and my Mathmech Addition to go into Splash Mage. I'm still going to go into Accesscode Talker. It's not going to be an OTK here, but I can obviously not only nearly finish my opponent off, but I can also get rid of all of their back rows as well, and then we can just set up the Superfactorial, you know, between that and the Ash Blossom for the Scarlet Sanguine and the Called By for their Eldritches. I'm feeling pretty confident they're just not really going to be winning this duel. Alright, so indeed, here is the Accesscode's effect. Like I said, I'm just going to start popping off these back rows one at a time. I'm honestly kind of surprised my opponent didn't activate Scarlet Sanguine unless they'd already sent both their copies of Eldritch. I actually didn't look too carefully to see if they're playing 2 or 3. These could be their only 2 copies of Eldritch here. So this might look a little weird here. You might be wondering why I'm using the Call By on my turn and not waiting until my opponent's turn. The reason that I'm not doing that is I don't want my opponent to send the Cursed Eldland as a cost for the effect of the Eldritch here. Although I guess to be fair, they could do that anyway. I just now thought about that. That was my reasoning for doing this in game, is that I'll get the Eldritch out of the grave now, they won't be able to use it on their turn, and again, my thought oh, you know what it was? It's not that I didn't realize the Cursed Eldland would still get sent. I think what happened is I missed that my opponent discarded a second Eldritch until I'd already activated the Call By. The memory's coming back to me now. So, I mean, it was a misplay on my part either way. I should have been watching my opponent's discards more carefully, and I definitely should have just waited until their turn to Call By the grave, but it's not going to super matter. Either way, they're not going to be able to use Eldritch during their next turn, and they lose one of their Eldritches out of the graveyard, which is nice too. Yeah, looking to set up some stuff with their Eldritch cards. I'm not really too concerned about that. I can get rid of one of those cards with the Superfactorial and then negate the other with Diameter's effect on Laplacian, so not really concerned. And then again, with the Scarlet Sanguine, I've got an Ash Blossom here, so I'm actually going to flip up the Superfactorial right away during my opponent's draw phase. I don't want them to get an opportunity to use this card beforehand. So, what was the other card my opponent said? It was Conquistador, right? Yeah. I'm not really concerned about that. If they don't have the Eldritch on the board, I can already stop them from getting the Eldritch with the Ash Blossom. So I think what I'll do here, although because I can actually Ash Blossom the Scarlet Sanguine, I think I'll just use the Superfactorial on the card in hand, obviously, and then the monster. But if they chain this and summon it as a monster, which they are actually going to do, then I get to get 3 cards here, which is really nice. So, as I said before, just going to fire up the Ash Blossom in response to the Sanguine. So I guess maybe they did have a third Eldritch, because they had a chance to activate this. My theory beforehand was that because they didn't have an Eldritch in their deck, maybe they couldn't activate Scarlet Sanguine, but they had the opportunity to activate it here, so I don't know. I don't know what was going on here. Alright, now Laplacian resolves. I'll discard their card in hand, a Mono Awato, send all 3 of those cards. We'll trigger the Cursed Eldland, but I can just negate it with the Diameter effect, so it's not really a concern. And then, yeah, like I said, my opponent's at 400 here, so there's really nothing they can do. All that during the draw phase, too. We took care of our opponent's entire board during their draw phase, which is pretty neat. Yeah, opponent gets to set 1 Huakiro here, but that's totally fine. I don't have another card to banish off of Accesscode, but I don't need it. I could have just battled through the monster with Laplacian if they summoned it in defense mode and then smacked them directly with the access code for lethal there. So there's that duel. We did get a little bit lucky that our opponent didn't have any of the floodgates. I was looking at their list and they're definitely playing them. So yeah, if they had there can only be one, that would obviously have not been ideal. But at the same time, it's like, they didn't have it, so it's fine. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine. But even if they did have it, like, well then, I mean, at that rate, that would be a completely different duel. But the main point I was going to say is, like, you know, we saw a game recently with Brandon Despia where we were able to play through a bunch of floodgates just with beatdowns. And I've honestly done the same numerous times with Mathmech as well. I have said this before, and I'll say it again. Just because you're up against a stun deck does not mean it's an auto-concede by any means. A lot of people treat that as an auto-concede. I think that's a huge mistake. People say it's save time, but if you're looking to ladder, the time you'll have to make by recouping that loss is going to be, in my opinion, equivalent to, if not greater, than playing out the duel against stun. So it's like, you might as well try it. That's just my 2 cents. But that's all for that game. Let's go and dive straight into the next one here. Alright, here we have a game against Spiral. This deck really scares me. This deck scares me mostly because I don't know what it does fully. It's one of those decks where it's like Endymion, where like, I've played against it enough that I get the general gist of what's happening most of the time, but good play on my opponents, by the way, to okay, let's talk about this turn 1 for a second. But the only thing I was going to say is that it's like, it's one of those decks that can bait out your negates like 8 different times before they actually need to use the effects, and I'm not super duper confident that I know the choke points of Spiral. That's why the deck scares me so much. Of course, the addition of Illusion of Chaos offered a great consistency boost to the deck as well, being able to search out Magician's Souls. So, my opponent fired off Maxx during the draw phase. I've said this many times before since the release of Sprites, but I do think this is correct. I think especially at like Diamond and upper levels of competitive play, you should absolutely be using Maxx during the draw phase to play around Triple Tactics talent. Any player worth their salt and that is playing a deck that can accommodate it will be playing that card. And you will often lose to that card if you carelessly play into it. So definitely good of my opponent to do that during the draw phase here. If you look at my hand though, I had a Maxx Ash Blossom, Mathmech Addition, and then Superfactorial and Call By. So my hand was actually dead anyway. I actually did not have any live plays. That is kind of like the drawback to Maxx, but it's such a niche scenario. So I'm just going to set 2 cards and pass here. This is actually going to do a lot of things that would make this play a lot better if my opponent had not done that. I'm basically giving my opponent bad information here, which is a lot more valuable than I think a lot of players realize. To my opponent, it looks like I did not have a response from Maxx and therefore had to end my turn 1 early, not playing into it. When in reality, that's not the case at all. I had 2 ways to answer it. I had Ash Blossom and Call By, but I didn't need to use them because even if I had used them, I wouldn't have had plays anyway. So now my opponent is probably thinking that I don't have Ash Blossom or Call By. Like, it's probably in their mind that I specifically do not have those cards, when in fact I, of course, do. This is really, really nice, being able to give situations, or being able to give your opponent bad information in situations like this, to lead them to believe that the game is going one way when things are actually progressing totally differently. I am in turn also going to fire off Maxx during my opponent's draw phase. They have a Call By here, so it doesn't really matter, but I still want to do that anyway. And yeah, the advantage here is that now my opponent could very easily just walk into this Ash Blossom and Call By. Indeed, they probably weren't anticipating me using Ash Blossom on the preparation of rights here, but we are going to indeed do just that. So I actually thought I was up against Drytron at this point, until I saw Illusion of Chaos, and I realized, oh, they were prepping for the illusions, so they probably had multiple ways to, or not multiple ways, what was I saying there? They were probably not going to be a ritual-based deck. They were probably going to use it in a different way. So here they're going to try to use the big red in order to get back the Master Plan, but we have the Call By to stop them from that. It's also going to be nice because even if they had another way to get back Master Plan, we have of course negated her effects for the duration of this turn and the next, which means our opponent's not going to be able to combo out, as Master Plan is vital to these Spirals combos. That much I do know. Generally speaking, I think if you're going to have like one Ash Blossom or something against this deck, I don't know. It's probably best to do it against the effect that grabs 2 cards here, the Spiral Resort and the Spiral Monster from deck to hand, but I'm not an expert of Spiral, and I don't claim to be one. I very much do not claim to be one, so. I do know, though, that my opponent's not going to really have a whole lot to do with only Magician Souls and Quick Fix here. Link it's a special the Super Agent, and they do actually call it correctly that I have the Addition. It doesn't really matter that Superfactorial is getting destroyed here, obviously. Yeah, now here they get to double Helix, and I think they do actually try to double Helix for the Master Plane here. Yeah, they do, but I don't know, maybe they just didn't realize that, like, yeah, Callby is going to negate it for the whole turn, so you don't get any of Master Plane's effects, and indeed, that is going to make it much harder for my opponent to really make any kind of solid play here. They can still summon it back from the graveyard with this Celine, but yeah, they're not going to get any amount of searching here. Hero's a little bit worried. I'm like, I'm not going to get Accesscode OTK'd, right? But not OTK'd. Gonna get smacked. Excuse me. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, gonna get smacked for 5,300, but definitely not for lethal here. So, I'm trying to figure out my plays here, right? I've got 2 Mathmech Additions, and what I'm thinking is Normal Summon Edition, Special Edition, probably just go for an Accesscode line. It's not going to be an OTK. I don't think I have a way to OTK here. Okay, what if I had Special Edition and gone for Alembertain to add Circular. Circular F. Oh, hang on. I might have had an OTK here. I was thinking I didn't mid-game. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and show you. I didn't really have much of a chance to think about it because my opponent just conceded as soon as I played Addition. I was thinking initially about just going for Accesscode, but no, I could have gone for Alembertain, Search Circular, Circular Pitch Sigma, because I don't have a monster in my extra monster zone. Then I can Special Sigma, Circular F adds the spell card, the Equation, and then yeah, we just use the Circular plus Alembertain, make Splash Mage, Splash Mage. I mean, yeah, you don't even need the Equation at that point. That's just the OTK. So yeah, we did actually have a comeback OTK. I thought my opponent might have conceded early, but no, 2 additions I think would have been enough there. So there's that duel. Let's hop straight into this next one here. This time we're up against Branded Despia. It's going to be a 60-card variant, which is definitely more than a bit gutsy, in my opinion. It's like, you know, we've got the Grass at 2 and Algebra at 2. So I don't know. It's like this. I think the 60-card variant is still fine, but I do think it's a little gutsy to try to play that one specifically in the current meta. So here I'm just going to Cynet Mining for the Circular. I could have actually discarded the Triple Tack this time because I discarded an Addition here. I could have discarded Triple Tack and then kept the Addition to go for an extended play of making the Laplacian and hand ripping on turn 1, but as good as I do think hand ripping on turn 1 is, I think I value having the Triple Tack even more highly. Like, it's so easy for my opponent to activate like a Maxx or an Ash Blossom at some point, or even like a Veiler or something, and for me to just kind of get screwed by that. So I need to have some way to fight back if that happens. Triple Tack, of course, I will continue to say this because I continue to see people doing this. If you're drawing 2 cards off Triple Tack, you're probably using this card wrong. There are some niche scenarios where draw 2 is actually the correct option, but if you get disrupted on turn 1 and can't make any more plays, then you definitely need to be using the third effect to look at your opponent's hand and put a card back. And if it's turn 2, this is where it gets a lot more dependent. If it's turn 2 and you get interrupted, it's usually better to take control of an opponent's monster. To be fair, that tends to be more true in Sprites. Mathmech can't make quite as good of use as opponent's cards as Sprites can. Sprite can take any monster with a level 2 and turn it into an elf, and that's fine. But and then, of course, with all the abundance of Sprite cards running around out there, the Steel card becomes better. But I don't know. I've seen, like I said, I've seen a lot of people just auto-pick draw 2 in a situation where there were better effects to pick here. So, in any case, my opponent's going to start off with an Allure of Darkness. The Allure itself, to me, is a giveaway that we're up against Branded Despia. There's not really many, if any, other decks at all in the meta that would be playing this card, so I don't want to use Ash Blossom on Allure. definitely going to hold it for the branded opening. And just try to save it for that. I'm going to go into the Apollusa. I like to keep Linguriboh instead of making a 3-material Apollusa. I typically like to keep Linguriboh in addition to the 3-material Apollusa, because, like, there have been enough times where I use the Linguriboh as a material for Apollusa, and then they have an imperm, and then I'm just, like, screwed. So, the Linguriboh stops that from happening. Also, most of the time, the third monster effect doesn't even really come up. You've either stopped them with the first two, or they've baited one or two to be able to battle over Apollusa, and then they do their plays anyway during main phase 2. So that's just my 2 cents. I just generally find that having the Linguriboh negation available is much more helpful than the Apollusa. But of course, our opponent here is playing Dark Ruler no more, so that's not really going to matter in this case. Indeed, both of our cards are just going to get negated. But this deck actually plays very well against Dark Ruler no more, because of its ability to have its major play in the form of one trap card, the Superfactorial. And that way you don't have all these monsters already set up on board, and that way they don't get Dark Rulered. So, here my opponent's got an Albaz. I'm just going to let this resolve. I don't really care about either of my monsters on the field, and if they get a Mirror Jade, that's fine. I'm not really super concerned about it. Here is a branded fusion I've been waiting for. I honestly suspected that all these plays for my opponent beforehand were just to try to bait out my Ash Blossom for the branded fusion, or like some kind of negate. That's the way they could successfully resolve the branded fusion. Indeed, branded fusion is always going to be branded SP's most powerful and important play, so I would, with some very niche exceptions in like a grind game where you know they don't have branded fusion and or good things to send or summon off of it, I would just always save Ash Blossom for branded fusion. So at this stage, okay, actually I did make a minor misplay here that I wanted to talk about. I actually should have chained the Superfactorial to the activation of branded in red. That would have allowed me to summon Primathmech Laplacian on this chain. And I don't know. I'm trying to figure out if I would have missed the timing of this if... Because I know Guardian Chimera's effect would have activated, and then I also would have been prompted to activate Primathmech Laplacian's effect. But I think I might have been able to use the Diameter effect to negate the Guardian Chimera here with Laplacian, and then also stand the Chimera. Maybe that would have happened, but I don't know, because you have to chain the Diameter effect directly to the effect you're trying to negate. But I also know that the optional effect of Laplacian would have triggered automatically before you could manually activate the Diameter effect. So I don't know how that actually plays out. If I would have chained, I mean, I think either way, like the Superfactorial chaining to the branded red would have been the better timing to play it, but I actually don't know if I would have been able to negate Guardian Chimera there, off the top of my head. If you know in the comments, definitely feel free to chime in there for sure. Oh, you know what? No, this does work out. I'm a dummy. This actually does work out the way I did it here, because this way I get the chance to respond with the guy. I went through that whole spiel. I should have just continued the replay. I accidentally activated at the right time to both negate the Guardian Chimera and then get the sends. I misremembered that. I actually was meant to ask that the other way around. If I had activated it in response to Branded in Red, would I have had the same opportunity? I don't think I would have, but... That's actually weird. Oh, no. I'm sorry. I actually messed it up again. And I didn't think of this in either the actual game or now during the replay. But the reason Laplacian didn't get sent and then in turn was able to activate is actually because of its own effect to detach material instead of being destroyed by card effect. That's what happened instead of it getting negated. So I guess my original point kind of stands and doesn't at the same time. I don't know. Hey, I don't read the cards, I just talk with them, what can I say? So, we have one more duel to take a look at. Let's dive straight into it. Our final duel for this video is actually going to be a mirror match. We're going to be up against another Mathmech deck. This one is more of a Code Talker variant. They're playing like the microcoder package. They're also on both Parallel Exceed and Final Sigma, neither of which I think are super great right now, honestly, or just in general. I've seen people ask, like, why not play Parallel Exceed anymore? The reason I don't like Parallel Exceed is that it's just, like, it requires too much setup being summoned specifically to an opponent's zone, in my opinion. And then on top of that, you really don't need the extra body. It's not that it's bad to have the extra body, that's good, but it's just like, it's not necessary and it's more difficult to do. So, anyway, my opponent's got a Gamma the Circular, which, you know, at first I thought like, that really sucks. But then I was looking at my hand here and I was like, wait, I think I have enough gas to not even need the circular effect here. I'm just going to use Alembertain to add the Superfactorial instead. Then I can bring back the Sigma in addition to playing the Addition from my hand. And then I'm going to use those to make Link Disciple and Devotee. I can afford to have Sigma get banished here because I've already got the Addition, Diameter, and Circular to summon the Laplacian during my opponent's turn here. So yeah, this is a nice line. Normally if Circular gets Gamma'd, that is absolutely a hard stop. You can usually keep going if your Circular gets just negated. That's honestly not as big of a deal, but it's a lot like Sprites in that regard, actually. Being negated and destroyed is just so much more impactful than just negating the card. So, very good tech for my opponent's part. Obviously, I think they're teching it more for Sprites than Mathmech, but it just also happened to have worked pretty well against this deck as well. But, again, with this particular hand, as you can see, I still got my typical end board of Wicckid, Linguriboh, IP, Superfactorial, with 3, including Diameter, set up in graveyard. So that's very nice. Unfortunately for me, though, my opponent's got a Dark Ruler no more. That's pretty brutal here. That's actually pretty brutal against this, you know, specific board state. But we do still have the Superfactorial, so I'm planning on just waiting until my opponent summons the Circular. Then I'll use Superfact and use Laplacian to stop that. But my opponent has a Crossout Designator. Woof! Oh, that's so brutal. It's not even called by. Call by would have at least let me summon the Alembertain here. But even that wouldn't have stopped me from getting OTK'd, and that's just the thing. My opponent easily had a decode, or not decode, an update jammer access code OTK line there, and I knew they had it, so I just decided to give it to them at this point. But I wanted to show that game because it did show a line where we were still able to get the full setup even without Circular. With Circular getting Gamma. It just so happened their opponent opened Dark Ruler no more and Crossout in the mirror match going second, which is really, really, really good. It's like, in the mirror match, those are, like, I'm just now actually realizing how insane our opponent's hand was for going second in the mirror match. They had Gamma, Dark Ruler no more, Crossout, and Circular. It's really, really good. But GG's all the same to Diamond, please. That's going to do it for our games for this video. Hope you all found this helpful. Without further ado, let's just go straight into our outro here. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack. You'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation. You do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now. So without further ado, this is Xlex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.